The most intelligent form of life on Europa, meanwhile, were a race of jellyfish-like creatures known as the Talker, but they were incredibly hostile and provided no aid to Fang and were initially his greatest obstacle. These aliens possessed a form of healing so advanced their DNA continually repaired itself from all forms of natural wear and tear, allowing the Talker to be effectively immortal. This did not mean they were indestructible, however. Their healing powers could not overcome all forms of damage, and the Talker were in fact prey to a large marine predator that almost resembled a cross between a reptile and a mammal, known as the Miok. Fang was even able to tame one of these super predators to protect his base and help him explore the seas, after he rescued the creature from a group of Talker. Still, provided they evaded the jaws of the Miok, or the savage, primitive reptilian mer-people known as the Quachi, then a Talker could theoretically live forever. Furthermore, the Talker, like any natural life form, underwent a series of radical physical changes as they grew older. As their lifespans were unlimited, however, then, once again, there was no end to the changes they could undergo. Different mature individuals could end up looking like members of completely different species, depending on their age. Finally, in addition to this, like any natural creature, the Talker were also subject to natural mutations, the most useful of which would spread their genes on, allowing the species to adapt and evolve. All of these factors came together to create one of Fang's worst enemies, the monstrous creature known as Maliak. This Talker was said to have been the longest-lived member of its kind, having somehow been able to evade the perils of Europa for over 700 years. Whilst the Talker had an intelligence on the level of human beings, they had not formed any kind of society, only very rarely grouping together to take down large prey or threats. Their immortal nature, coupled with the limited resources of the small moon they lived on, meant that the creatures felt that they simply could not afford to share resources. They also had no care for their children. Reproducing asexually, the beasts would often devour their children if they remained near them as well. As a result of this, many Talker were lucky to see 20 years, never mind 100. Maliak, however, somehow lived for over 7 centuries by the time Fang had arrived. By that stage, he had grown to be the largest creature on the planet, over 400 feet long, and did not even remotely resemble the rest of his kind. He regularly fed on the Talker's predators, the Miok, whilst the Quachi worshipped him as a god. Fang was lucky enough not to have any trouble with Maliak during his first visit to Europa. After making his way through its oceans and taming the Miok, Fang stabilized the magics that brought him here and, along with those he had mastered from Europa, which it took him over a year to master, the vampires created a special kind of craft from materials of his island base in the shape of an old Chinese mausoleum. Fang was also assisted in the building of his craft by a renegade Quachi named Ganzos, who had been kicked out of his tribe for using magic. Ganzos subsequently accompanied Fang on his journeys through space in this craft, but unfortunately the two always had to return to Europa to charge up the vehicle. Fang's island became a hotspot of magical energy due to constantly charging the vehicle, which soon drew the attention of Maliak. The monster's greater age had heightened its senses to the point where it was more sensitive to its environment, though some have suggested that it may have mastered magic at some point in its life, which could have been why it lived so long. Few other creatures on Europa were willing to touch magic, as they feared it, like on most natural worlds, to be fair. Either way, Maliak became intrigued by Fang's island, fearing that it may contain power that could actually threaten him, and soon set up a nest there, easily dispatching Fang's pet Miok in the process. When Fang arrived to recharge again, he and Maliak fought, which resulted in the magics that had brought Fang to Europa in the first place once again becoming unstable. Ultimately, Maliak and Fang were unintentionally transported by them to several solar systems away onto a seemingly deserted sand world. There, Fang was forced to flee from Maliak, who was able to burrow itself into the sand and pursued him for days. Without any blood to feed on, Fang, however, soon became weak and delusional, but he was eventually found by the natives of the planet, a somewhat friendly but primitive race of reptilians. Sadly, when they took Fang in, his hunger got the better of him, and he attacked and very nearly killed one of them. Though he was able to regain his composure before he finished his victim, Fang was nevertheless restrained by the tribe who planned to kill him the next day. As a result, he wasn't able to help the tribe when Maliak attacked. The jellyfish monster proceeded to kill most of the tribe horribly, who sadly represented the last survivors of that species on the planet, though Fang was able to get some of them to safety, and they banded together out into the wilderness, now under his leadership, until Ganzos was able to track Fang down, with the two subsequently rescuing the last survivors of the reptilian race in their craft after another brutal confrontation. The reptilians wouldn't have survived for much longer anyway, as the planet had become a desert due to drifting too close to its sun. Fang and Ganzos deposited the reptilians on another world where they would again thrive, eventually becoming one of the most advanced races in their section of the galaxy and close allies of ours in the far future, known as the Drancors. Sadly, even the Drancors are unsure of their history before Fang's arrival, due to it being lost. Fang and Ganzos, meanwhile, continued to travel to many other worlds for years, saving hundreds of civilizations together before Fang eventually decided to return home. Ganzos decided to go with him to Earth this time, as there was nothing on his world anymore. Maliak, meanwhile, was left to rot on the planet, with his healing powers allowing him to survive without any food. Though they could survive without food, doing so caused the talkers' higher brain activity to decrease and their memories to permanently vanish. As Maliak drifted closer to the sun, the rays and increased radiation of the planet slowly began to mutate Maliak in ways even he couldn't imagine. The monster was ultimately spared being cooked alive when one of his followers brought him back to Europa. Though Ganzos had been kicked out for using magic, others had been inspired by his actions, leading to more renegades in not only his tribe but others, including Maliak's Quachi followers. After Fang left Europa for good, one of Maliak's followers used the magics in his former base to not only track down, but teleport Maliak back home. By this stage, Maliak had lost all higher reasoning powers. Still, the radiation of the sun, as well as the Earth's magics that had been used to bring him to and from this alien world that had become embedded in his body, all mutated and twisted his body beyond its natural state. Coupled with his advanced age, Maliak was now virtually indestructible, at least to any other force on Europa, over the course of the next 100 years, during which time he slowly regained memories of his former life as his body continued to mutate. He remembered vaguely the man who had led to his suffering on the desert planet, and soon began uniting his followers as an army to claim the other worlds they could see in the sky at night, such as the Earth, which he knew his enemy came from. Maliak didn't have to wait long, as soon Fang came to him. This, however, was a version of Fang from far in the future, after he had constructed a time and space machine. This version of Fang defeated Maliak with the aid of his companions, Lindsay and Kirstine, but the jellyfish monster still managed to escape Europa using one of the ships his minions had constructed to originally invade the other worlds. The monster travelled through space for many years, during which he underwent more mutations, again as a result of his long lifespan. The alien sun's radiation and other cosmic rays he passed through in his poorly protected ship, which he deliberately sought out, knowing the effects it had on his body. Eventually, Maliak's reproductive system, having long been dormant, suddenly awakened. Talkers can only reproduce 6 times in their lifetime, with Maliak having not only been through them all, but also having eaten all of his children. Maliak's reproductive system, thanks to his mutations, had not only exceeded its natural lifespan, but continually reproduced up to 6 children per day. None of these children were normal talkers. Instead, they resembled Maliak's twisted form and possessed many of the same strange powers he had. At first, Maliak devoured his children, but after they reached an uninhabited planet, he started to use them as slaves and soldiers to conquer other planets. In time, Maliak's new race, who were known as the Vaskin, became one of the most powerful and dangerous races in the universe, conquering and enslaving many worlds under their vile master's supervision. Maliak took pride in being the ultimate survivor and wanted to outlast all other life in the universe, after which he could then live in peace as the ultimate life form. Professor Fang and his companions faced them many times in his time and space machine, with the monsters becoming collectively among his deadliest enemies. Back on Earth, meanwhile, Fang and Ganzos travelled the world together, fighting monsters, and tried to use the technology and magics they had gathered from around the universe to help elevate their planet's technology. Fang soon realised that introducing these elements before humanity was ready was a recipe for disaster, and wisely avoided trying to accelerate humanity's development in this way again. Ganzos, meanwhile, eventually left Fang. He fell in love with a merwoman named Feniax. The vampire would take on many other companions and assistants over the years. None of them, it must be said, were ever more than friends with the vampire. Whilst he did have a son as a man, Fang was largely asexual during his life as a vampire. Indeed, most vampires are asexual, contrary to popular belief. Very few of them can feel anything but negative emotions such as hatred, bitterness, regret, and the desire to hunt, kill, and propagate their species. Some soul vampires can cling on to emotions like love, but it almost always takes on a fanatical, obsessive, and twisted form. The few soul vampires who were able to fight the demon within were able to still feel at least genuine emotional love for others, but even then, relationships among these kinds of vampires tend to be rare. One only has to look at Carleen, another famous heroic soul vampire, who, prior to her transformation, was described by all who knew her as a bubbly, flirty, fun-loving party girl with a very active social life and a number of close, loving relationships. After her transformation, in contrast, she became a more morose, quiet, tormented character, though she did still, unlike Fang, enjoy some romantic relationships from time to time with some notable men and women. She generally shut that side of herself off. It makes sense that Castran's curse would try and take away as much as it could of the people it infects, and in the case of Carleen and Fang, the fact that they were able to hold on to anything at all is a miracle. Fang soon came into conflict with his arch-enemy Huan, not long after Ganzos left. Huan had believed his enemy was dead for years, and actually fell into a state of depression at losing what he believed was his last chance at vengeance. He almost didn't believe that Fang could have survived for all this time without him knowing it, until he heard the rumours that he had travelled to the stars and back. Unlike virtually everybody else, Huan believed it. Again, because he didn't think his enemy could hide from him any other way, and unlike the others, he did not underestimate Fang's abilities. Huan soon became excited at the prospect of travelling to other worlds too, and tried to force Fang to tell him, leading to more clashes between them. Eventually, Huan found a way to literally drain the knowledge from Fang's mind, using powerful dark magics he had discovered in the ruins of Shambhalan. After gaining the knowledge from Fang's mind, Huan attempted to construct his own machine, hoping to further torment Fang by giving him the guilt of all the worlds he would corrupt by spreading the curse of vampirism. In the resulting fight between the two vampires, the magics once again went haywire and Huan was catapulted through time and space. Fang believed he was at last destroyed, but in truth, Huan had become trapped on another world, known as Telescar, that was being besieged by demons. These creatures despised all natural creatures, believing that demon kind had been created to wipe them off the face of the universe. They refused to accept Huan as they believed that Castran, whose power they could sense in him, was a fool who wasted his power. Huan was forced to form an alliance with the natives on the planet, the humanoid Telescars. In time, with Huan's help, the natives defeated the demons, and Huan was hailed as a hero, and the vampire was later able to use this status to gradually take over their society. Huan built an empire from their world that conquered other planets. He did not do so out of malice and hatred, however. Huan had been genuinely moved by the plight of the aliens he had rescued from demons and came to care about them. In some small way, he rediscovered the humanity buried deep beneath the demon that had consumed him all those years ago. He was still a conqueror, and more than happy to satisfy his twisted, demonic urges against his enemy from time to time. Still, Huan only conquered worlds that had similarly been overrun by the supernatural to liberate their people. Those that weren't, he simply provided aid to. Finally, the few worlds where the supernatural were living in peace with the naturals, he did not bother at all. Huan did many great things for hundreds of years, stamping out several demonic strongholds and empires in the universe and saving planets from destruction. When he next met a much older, time-travelling version of Fang, he, even for a time at least, forgave the vampire, stating, at least, that he felt Fang was a force for good that he should not extinguish. To their surprise, Fang and Huan even became allies for a time, with Fang helping his former foe deal with several demonic invasions of his own planet. There were always clashes between them, however, due to Huan's more ruthless methods, and obviously the bad blood between them was never completely gone. Sadly, the time-travelling Fang later encountered a future version of Huan who had not only returned to his evil ways, but had degenerated into a hideous, demonic creature capable of condemning an entire world to an eternity of torment. Fang didn't recognize Huan in this form at first. He was so hideously deformed and had powers uncommon to any vampire. It was difficult after this horrifying experience for Fang to work alongside the more benevolent, younger version of the vampire. He wanted to warn him, or even kill Huan, to stop the atrocities he knew he would carry out in the future, but sadly Fang knew he couldn't change history to that extent. The cause of Huan's downfall was later revealed to be his own people, the space vampires, or a section of them. Ironically, centuries later, Huan's original plan to spread vampirism had come into effect. When a Martian visited the Earth for exploration and was infected by a vampire, he went on to spread the curse of vampirism throughout Mars, destroying it. The last of the Martian vampires then fled to the stars after their attempt to invade the Earth was foiled by the circus family. More on them later. The vampires would then go on to infect and destroy countless more worlds over thousands of years. This particular group of the monsters were able to infiltrate Huan's planet and spike its water supply with a new, concentrated form of vampirism that had been made from the numerous pieces of technology salvaged from other species they had conquered over the centuries in space. The vast majority of the Telescar were turned overnight and used the weapons they had spent centuries building to protect natural creatures to inflict devastation on the rest of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds fell to this new vampire army who destroyed both demonic and natural worlds for the fun of it. Huan was forced to go on the run, and whilst he did attempt to rally people against the vampires, sadly no one believed that he did not play a part in the corruption of the Telescar due to his vampiric nature. Even with all the good he had done, it was hard for the other worlds to see him as anything other than a demon. Huan initially became a recluse, but survivors of several of the worlds the Telescar vampires, whose empire later collapsed due to their usual backstabbing nature, hunted him down, and he was soon forced to fight back, which led to Huan rediscovering his bloodlust. In order to cope with his guilt and failures, Huan deluded himself into thinking that God, or the Creator, wished him to be a monster by taking away everything and everyone who would have stopped him from being one, and he resumed his evil ways like never before. He travelled from world to world, causing as much suffering, strife, and chaos as he could, using magic, technology, and his own manipulations. During this time, he encountered and fought Fang many times too. He killed both humans and demons in his vengeance, wanting to make all life suffer. Eventually, the vampire's burning hatred and malice would see him travel to the Hand of Chaos. Located many galaxies beyond ours, the Hand as it was known was the remains of a creature from the void that entered our reality many centuries ago. The void is the space outside of our, and indeed all, universes, and is where they came from. Before the barrier was placed around the universe to protect it from life forms in the void, a renegade demon allowed a desperate ethereal being from the void into our reality and then proceeded to possess it. The demon wanted a creature not from this omniverse as a host, as it would be an unknown creature. The demon got more than it bargained for, however, as the combination of the ethereal's unknown and conflicting energy mixed in with the demon created an explosion that consumed hundreds of worlds. As the energy settled, it began to form into a new life form, neither demon or whatever the ethereal would have become had it formed properly. The gestation of this new entity was stopped by the combined efforts of several gods, many of whom were either killed or pulled into the hand that had formed, and never seen again. Whilst the entity never formed completely thanks to the gods, its hand continued to exist and was simply left. No life form, due to its unknown nature, dared to go near it until Huan. He had nothing to lose. Either he could harness some of its power, or it would destroy him and he would be free from his pain. For whatever reason, Huan was able to enter and, unlike all before him, was able to leave. Some believe it is because he was willing to let whatever dark forces still dwelled within corrupt him completely. Not that there was much humanity left to corrupt. Either way, Huan emerged as more than just a vampire or a demon. He was a completely new, unique, monstrous creature with incredible powers, the likes of which had never been seen before. In this form, Huan went on to actively destroy hundreds of worlds and condemn others to an eternity of torment. The former vampire was able to accomplish this by attacking a planet's core and merging it with the dark power within him, which then spread throughout the world and ensured all of its inhabitants' worst fears became a reality, and that the inhabitants would be brought back after being tortured to death by their nightmares again and again. There was no way to save a world that was condemned this way, at least not as far as Professor Fang knew, due to the unknown nature of the ethereal. Professor Fang faced Huan many hundreds of times in this form, with their feud becoming more brutal than ever before. Huan's hatred of Fang was renewed when he learned that, as a time traveller, Fang knew the fate of his planet and hadn't stopped it. Huan's form, meanwhile, continued to be twisted the more magic and dark energy he was able to absorb from other worlds. In this form, Huan, it is believed, will ensure the final death of Earth hundreds of thousands of years from now, long after the age of Tyros. Fortunately, like many intelligent species, we will outlive our planet. It is not known if Fang was ever able to finally destroy his arch-enemy, but his feud with Huan endured through all of our records of his life as a time traveller, with Fang, according to his later companions, becoming obsessive in his quest to destroy the monster he had helped to create. At the very least, after Huan first disappeared into space, Fang was given peace from his mortal enemy for many hundreds of years. During that time, Fang continued to explore the world, learning new magics. It is not known the exact year he attended Scholomance, a school of black magic run by a renegade dragon known as Kilgara, and the former king of hell, Mephistopheles. At the very least, it was many centuries before Dracula and the Grand High Witch Eva attended. Both recalled Fang had been hailed as one of the most gifted students and constantly held up as the gold standard by Kilgara. Fang is believed to have attended Scholomance in order to better understand the black arts, if he was to fight them. The wizard-turned-vampire also later turned his attention to science too, as again he felt he needed to understand all of the elements and become just as renowned and knowledgeable of the natural world as he did about magic. He is believed to have first gone by the title of Professor Fang in the 16th century. Sadly, however, his activities from his banishing Huan across space to the 19th century are not known in as much detail, as Fang was keen to keep himself in the shadows and worked hard to cover his role-up in any major events he may have played a part in. He has been attributed with everything from the Renaissance to the fall of Rome to the death of Genghis Khan, at least some of which are probably exaggerations. One thing that is known is that during the 7th century, Fang took part in the war against the beasts, creatures from another realm of existence known as the Savage Realm. One species of beast, known as the Hara, sought to conquer the entire savage realm and posed a threat to other realms too. Fang is believed to have spent years in the battle, which ended with the Hara being pushed back but not defeated. These brutal ape-like monsters similarly became among Fang's most persistent enemies that he encountered again and again as a time traveller, which we will explore in the next chapter.